Hey there guys, this is Tyler. Welcome back to another stream. Hello Ice Gamer. Welcome to this stream. Hello, your videos are actually entertaining. Thank you. Also good luck watching every game theory. We're halfway there. We're on part 7. We're on part number 7. Where every part we watch 4 videos. So yeah, halfway, I think. I had a counter, forgot to set it. But anyway, I think we should just get straight in. What do you guys think? Yeah? You guys think we should get straight in? Yeah? Yeah. Alright. I think we should get straight in. So, yeah. How many? Alright, 42. Is that how many we have left? Like, actually, let me look at the last stream. Might be 41. Wait. Actually, as a second thought, didn't he? Yeah, Matpat released a new one. Not Matpat, sorry. It was a different host. Game Theory released a new one. Under the new host. We are going to watch that, so... yeah. We're actually going to update this to 43. Yeah, alright, let's get to watching. Woohoo, 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 woohoo. Alright. Take you 15. 50, yeah, probably. Like 10 episodes, actually. Oh, drawing. Drawing. Freddy Fazbear. Oh. Oh. Oh God.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to games.
Oh, and there's an ad. There's an ad. I forgot I don't have ad blocker anymore because YouTube's like, no. God damn it. Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory. And then, psh, it's the same ad. What the fuck?
Theory, where today we continue our analysis of FNAF's newly released ghost stories, the Fazbear Frights. Last week we covered the majority of this book's key reveals, including the massive bombshell where we visit what is chronologically the earliest Freddy Fazbear's Pizza we've yet seen, a location that we have never visited before in any of this series canon, but one that we know to have existed somewhere in the background since the release of FNAF 2. With 6 murders set in 1985, it makes it very likely that this was the mystery location to have closed down the franchise before its grand reopening 2 years later in 1987. And that, loyal theorist, is why I scrounged through every scrap of FNAF content out there and, like, entered the Stitch raid over here. Scott throws out ideas and I'm just digging through his dumpster hoping to cobble it all together into a workable body theory thing. Whatever. As that silly children's workbook taught me years ago, some of the biggest lore reveals in this franchise...
Wait, I know how to get people on the stream. I'll just put this back on. No. Just fucking...
This can happen in the unlikeliest of places. Yeah, we're gonna reveal Golden Freddy's name in this children's workbook word search. Fantastic. Actually, it was fantastic. I thought it was a brilliant way to do it. That said, I will not forgive dabbing Chica. Never.
Yeah, fuck that.
Truly, it cursed image. But you see, I think there was one other massive lore reveal hidden in Fazbear Frights, buried amongst the tales of Extreme Makeover Robot Edition and Ball Pit Time Machine. A lore reveal that is absolutely worth our time exploring today. A lore reveal that introduces us to a character who's been helping to pull the strings since the very beginning. One who's been misleading us about the horrors of Fazbear Entertainment. Someone whose importance goes far beyond just the 40 pages he appears in throughout this book. I think Into the Pit may have just introduced us to the creator
We just got
these
started.
games. And I'm not talking about Scott Cawthon. Let me explain. One of the strangest inclusions in FNAF VR Help Line was a reference to a game designer that was telling lies about the horrors happening at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
We know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades. And while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
And yes, that sweet, sweet piece of man candy that you see there is Scott Cawthon himself. Okay, fine, haha, funny joke there, Scott. I mean, this series likes to get self-aware. We're all familiar with that. And for a mainline title in the series, this one felt pretty extreme, but fine, cool with it. And then you keep playing the game, and what started as a one-off tongue-in-cheek joke actually becomes a critical piece of the lore.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer who supposedly made up a bunch of crazy stories that tarnished the brand.
But it doesn't stop there. There's more twists in FNAF VR than there is in a typical M. Night Shyamalan
virtual
movie.
experience.
Fazbear Entertainment hired the game developer. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
The whole thing starts with like, oh, this game designer is a joke. Psych! No, he's not. He's actually critical to the lore and is exposing the crimes happening at these restaurants. Booyah, fooled you again. He's actually one of the villains. When the dust actually settles on this plot development, what we're left with is a game designer looking like Scott Cawthon, hired by Fazbear Entertainment to make indie games, the games that we've all been playing up to this point, in order to misdirect us away from the real lore of the story. So of course, I did an episode all about how Scott Cawthon is the villain of FNAF. Let me rephrase what we just heard. Scott is one of the bad guys. He was lying to us. If FNAF VR's tapes are to be believed, pretty much everything we know from the first 3, at least, but maybe even 4, 5, heck, 6 games could all be thrown out as complete fabrications created by Scott Cawthon for the sole reason because he was paid off by Fazbear Entertainment. Except I was wrong. Nothing new to be sure, but here, my timing couldn't have been any worse. You see, earlier that very week that I uploaded that video, Scott made a post on Reddit saying that the indie game developer from FNAF VR isn't him. Here's what he had to say, quote, "The question is this, is Scott Cawthon now a part of FNAF lore? The short answer is no. Yes, I used my own picture for this indie developer because it's an obvious parallel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually me in universe." End quote. Yeah, Scott, you remain vague and mysterious about the lore for years, half a decade at this point, and this one little detail is the thing that you want to clarify, and you just choose to do it right before my video on this very topic, which, while it is honestly still a perfectly valid theory, gets everyone to dismiss all of the findings for that entire theory since it's the one small detail that I get wrong and everyone focuses on. I don't have feelings about any of that at all. Scott continues, quote again. So no, I'm not canon. Only the existence of a game developer that supposedly made video games based on actual events that may or may not be a cover-up by Fazbear Entertainment is canon. Keep in mind that I do tend to use pictures of me and my family in the games, just because they're so readily available. In FNAF 4, I used a picture of a mountain range that I took while I was a truck driver in West Texas. I used a picture of a snowman that me and my older sons made together. I used a picture of a pet mockingbird that we nursed back to health one year. Do these have lore significance? Well, you probably already know the answer. End quote. Oh, I know the answer, Scott. And that answer is yes. You breathe and it becomes canon. My ever-decreasing sanity aside, it does leave open the door as to the identity of who this rogue indie developer is. And I think that Fazbear Frights' story Into the Pit reveals to us who it might actually be. Admittedly, this is a bit looser of a theory, but
because my channels are relevant in 2024.
Our secret game designer, the one who's been lying to us through these games, is the story's main character, Oswald. spooked little 10-year-old boy who winds up in a time-traveling ball pit to visit the 1985 murder scene of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I believe he grows up to be hired on by Fazbear Entertainment to create these games. Now, that might seem like a stretch for a character that we only get to know in the span of 40 pages, but holy Ballora! Is there a lot of evidence in those 40 pages to back that assertion up? Shortly into his story, Oswald is shown to be obsessed with animatronics for no apparent reason. Quote from the book: he didn't know why, but lately he'd been drawing mechanical animals, bears, bunnies, and birds. He imagined them being human-sized and moving with the jerkiness of robots in an old science fiction movie. Sometimes he drew the animals exposed metal skeletons or sketched them with the fur
What the
peeled
fuck is this?
Creepy effect, like seeing a person's skull peeking out from beneath the skin. End quote. Now mind you, this is without him ever having a connection to animatronics. Heck, he doesn't have a connection to the pizzeria at this point in the story. He has never been there. Nothing. This is just him naturally choosing to draw these oddly specific things without any outside references or influences. So already this boy seems to have himself a strange connection to the FNAF lore, or is just a psychopath in training, but there's more. For such a short story, Into the Pit takes a lot of time to establish Oswald as a fan of video games, B-grade Japanese movies, and manga. A lot.
Manga.
For a 40-page story. We hear about him listening to video game soundtracks. We witness the debates that he has with his father over cheesy Toho-style Godzilla monsters. How funny he finds the actors' lips not matching up with the dubbed-in words in those sorts of movies. He visits the library and we hear about his enthusiasm for the latest manga installment. Now, the connection to video games is pretty obvious here, right? If he likes video games, well, there's a chance that he'd want to grow up to be a designer of video games himself. But it's his connection to old, cheesy Japanese films and manga that really got my gears turning. Think back to Ultimate Custom Night. At various point thresholds in that game, you would unlock the Bear of Vengeance cutscenes.
The bear one, Freddy and Foxy ones are fine. The Chica ones, though.
Japanese samurai movies. The art style clearly riffing on classic anime and manga animations. The mysterious designer of the FNAF games, who presumably made Ultimate Custom Night, would need to be a fan of this style of storytelling to want to incorporate it into his work. And here we have ourselves Oswald, a person who exists in this universe, whose limited characterization is spent establishing him as a fan of exactly this type of storytelling. Speaking
Matthew
of
Patrick didn't need to
characterization,
include
it's
the
a minor connection, but a
manga
key point of
part,
the
I
story
think,
is how
but he
money
did. Yeah.
strapped Ozzy and his family are. The
Sure
reason he
did.
spends so much of his time in the library and the pizzeria is that they're both cheap forms of entertainment during the day, while his family works over the summer. If Oswald were to grow up and end up designing the FNAF games, well, it would actually be a somewhat similar story arc to Scott Cawthon himself. As his story goes, Scott was a struggling game designer. He was making minimum wage during the day as a Dollar General store clerk and working on his games at night, with none of them going anywhere, many of them being poorly received. The first Freddy's game was the one where all of his years of hard work and grinding finally paid off. There's obviously a lot more to that story, but suffice it to say, Oswald seems to be a character after Scott's own heart, coming from modest means, a fan of nerd culture. So to see Ozzy be the in-universe programmer of these games, to be Scott's literal in-universe stand-in for himself, well, it doesn't seem like that much of a stretch. But okay, saying our designer was this kid who draws spooky animatronics, comes from a low to modest income family, a story similar to Scott, and likes video games and anime is still a bit of a stretch, right? Describes like 90% of kids. Okay, well, maybe not all kids have a psychic connection with a decades-old murder restaurant, but the rest of it, sure, pretty generic kid. Here's the thing though, we're not just talking about Oswald's character traits here. If you look at Ozzy's experience with the Fazbear restaurant in the story, you could see where he'd be inspired to include certain game elements that we ourselves have played with. The first and most obvious is Jeff, the current owner of Jeff's Pizzeria, the pizzeria that took over the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's and Oswald's time. He's described in the book like this, quote, Jeff was creepy too. He looked 100 years old, but was probably just 30. With those heavy-lidded, bloodshot eyes,
I love the Gmod map in the background.
Speech and movement. He was like a zombie pizza chef. End quote. Slow movements, bloodshot eyes, zombie pizza chef with a red stained apron. It sounds like it could very well be the inspiration behind an undead murderer in a pizzeria who refuses to die, or a walking purple zombie that haunts the streets of the town. Remember, the game designer hired on by Fazbear Entertainment was tasked to lie about and make light of the murders in the Freddy restaurants. So what we see in the games would likely be a mix of reality and fiction. Oswald could very well be pulling from his real-life experiences. I mean, the names of of people Oswald encounters also have themselves an uncanny similarity to what we see in the games. Ozzy's best friend from the past is named Mike. Mike
Mike.
says this. Quote, you know, when I was little, I
God.
loved Freddy Fazbear's Band. I even had a stuffed Freddy I used to sleep with. End quote. Woo. Sorry, that's the lore connection alarm. It goes off every time someone makes a passing reference to FNAF 4. In that same conversation, Mike also reveals that he has himself a sister. Sorry again. And then they also talk about how creepy clowns and dolls are. Apologies, that's my other alarm. That's the sister location revelation
and it's
alarm.
blue.
Anyway,
And
it doesn't
FNAF 4
seem to
was
be
red.
Mike Afton or
Actually
Mike
fits.
Emily. Oh, you can bet I checked into that one. But these conversations could certainly have inspired Oswald to make a character named Mike who lives and loves the Freddy Fazbear franchise.
growing, he
who
can
has
become
himself
fat.
A favorite Freddy plush, who has a
Cried
sister
child's a
who
fat
loves
fuck.
dolls,
You
becomes
fat
a really
fuck.
creepy clown doll
You obese
hybrid
fuck.
who commands an army of dolls herself. Later in the book, Oswald meets a girl named Gabrielle, who loves Greek myth and gives him the courage to fight back against Golden Bonnie. Gabrielle is a very random
glitch
character,
trap.
but one with, again, a very important name. One that is, once again, shockingly similar to one of the kids that we find on our gravestone, Gabriel. Even the theme of this short story could have inspired Oswald's games. You see, after Oswald uncovers the 1985 murders, his dad gets sucked into the time travel pit by Golden Bonnie. And not just sucked in, he's replaced. Suddenly, everywhere his dad should be, Ozzy instead sees the silent, staring Golden Bonnie stalking him, watching him. Ozzy is the only one who sees it too. Everyone else just sees his father like normal. Actually, a really creepy, disturbing piece of imagery. One that gets Ozzy to question his own sanity.
I forget how dark
also
this
one
story
that directly
was.
ties back to the core motif of the games. A father, William Afton, becoming a golden bunny to terrorize kids, including his own son. A son who then has to go out, seek, and ultimately rescue his father in order to end the nightmare. And then you just have random lines inserted into the story that kind of fit, but kind of don't, but are also oddly specific to key moments throughout the FNAF franchise, like this. Quote, every day you toss me out on the street like garbage, end quote. Which are reminiscent of the FNAF 6 salvage minigames, with animatronics literally being thrown out on the street. This line, as Ozzy says it in the context of the scene, is kind of awkward, but if you're looking at it through the lens of, hey, this is actually a lore connection back to the games, now all of a sudden, it fits perfectly. There are just so many details that line up between Oswald's character, the people he meets, and the things that he goes through that line up with someone who could have made the FNAF games, who could have concocted parts and pieces of this story. Even motive-wise, it makes sense. Maybe Fazbear hires him on because they know he knows the truth, and it's to get him to shut up. Maybe Ozzy accepts the money because A, he's poor, and B, he's scared. He knows what they can do to him. I mean, will any of this ever come into play in any way, shape, or form? Unclear, probably not, but one, it actually may be able to help us better separate out the truth from the fiction in the early games of this franchise. Like knowing zombie people were inspired by Jeff, the owner of Jeff's Pizzeria, the zombie guy, may take all of that information off the table and really let us focus in on what truly matters, a specific subset of murders. But even if it doesn't do anything grandiose like that, too, I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing Oswald again at some point. I mean, already there's a new teaser for the next installment of Fazbear Fright, Fetch, up on Scott's website. So you can bet that we're going to have a lot more to say about this series and its connections with the games in the coming months. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Alright, yeah. Sorry that I sound so dead today, guys. I've had a long day. Gotta keep this going, though. Woohoo. That was okay. That was an okay video. That was okay. Oh, next is the Game Lab video. I'm not including that though in this. It's like we're watching every game theory. Oh, there's an ad. Fuck. Alright, Uno. I already started FNAF Uno. I think. No. April 4th, 2020. Alright. We're in 2020 now. I think we already were, maybe. But we are definitely. My name is Jeff. My name is Jeff. Alright. Videos remain. How about that? 20 minutes. 2020. Well, 10 to 21. Fuck.
Game series.
Book series.
Help wanted.
New book series.
Oh, come on. Fine. Phone guy.
Phone dude.
Purple guy.
Orange dude.
Didn't you just...
Jack Kennedy.
Fine. Wild card. Change the category. Timeline.
Bite of 87.
Chomp of 83.
Party of 85.
Wait, but...
Time traveling ball pit.
You can't just...
Reverse.
Oh, yeah? Reverse.
Reverse.
Reverse. Reverse. Reverse. Reverse. Reverse.
FNAF now. I love that. They need to make that. It might already exist. I don't know.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory. Another day, another installment in the FNAF multimedia conglomerate. So, at this point, some people in the FNAF community really hate my guts. Like, ring me through a meat grinder and feed me to a rabid dog animatronic levels of hate. Like, for instance, this comment, and I'll read it exactly as written to stay true to his authorial intent. Quote, as a hard-care FNAF fan, he's a embracement to FNAF tourists. He insists on using the box to proof his stupid stories, and they don't even make sense. He sucks and thinks he's smart, but he's not. I wish he would stoop. He then goes on to rant for a paragraph about how unrealistic time travel is in a franchise about robot rabbits haunted by ghost metal, but I think you get the point. And though I use
ghost possession is more possible than time travel.
This one really over-the-top extreme comment as an example, seeing stuff like this is a bummer, because I don't know if you can tell, but I really do like this franchise, and I see my role in it as a person just connecting ideas or presenting new threads to consider in a franchise that at this point is massive and really confusing. But his comment does bring up something that I should probably address at the top of this episode, since it'll be relevant for today. My use of the, how did he put it? The box to proof my theories. Here's the thing, friends. I think this is something that both sides could use as a reminder. Both my FNAF theory followers and my FNAF theory haters. There is a difference between canonicity and continuity. And I think a lot of the times in these sorts of discussions, they get confused with each other. Something being listed as canon just means that it's official. It is blessed by the person who is overseeing the rules of the universe. It is self-consistent within the boundaries of that fictional world. On the other hand, a continuity, at least as I'm referring to it here, is a timeline of events. A continuous story thread.
I don't know how anyone could think they're the same thing.
Take Star Wars as an example. Rey having magic healing powers in Rise of Skywalker, or Leia flying around like Mary Poppins in The Last Jedi, because they're appearing in official...
Seriously, who thinks canon and continuity is like the same thing? Like the same meaning? Seriously.
works of the franchise, those powers thereby get the green light as
I'm not saying Matpat's being too obvious. Like, yeah, Matpat's right for explaining this, obviously. I'm just saying, like, and I know there's people that think that. I'm just wondering why they think that, because clearly they're different. They're both story related, yes, but like,
literally anyone before this point in the series.
Yeah.
Tell you what, it would have been really handy for old Qui-Gon Jinn over there in episode 1, but the fact remains, healing is now a canonical force power, which means that the canonicity of certain powers is presenting challenges to the established continuity of events that came before. Now, this is where FNAF comes in. You see, you can have multiple continuities all existing under the same canon, and it appears as though this is how the FNAF franchise is working. The original novels and the original games exist in an alternate universe from one another. They are separate continuities, and yet they are all deemed canon. This was all expressly stated by Scott years ago. Quote, so yes, the book is canon, just as the games are. That doesn't mean that they are intended to fit together like two puzzle pieces. The book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story, and if you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll really enjoy it.
I'm just used to the puzzles that the book
what I've been trying to do with my theories, and what
I
I think some people on both sides misunderstand, is that I'm not trying to use the books to solve a continuity. I'm trying to use the books to establish a canon that will then allow allow us to solve a continuity. The books
Yeah.
present us with themes, concepts, characters, and motivations in one continuity that can then inform our understanding of a separate continuity. Or, at the very least, give
Yeah,
us
exactly.
questions that we can ask of that continuity. Charlie, being a robot in the books, tells us that in the canon of the Five Nights world, passable humanoid robots can actually be a thing. So, are there any characters in the games who this may or may not apply to? I don't know, but it's a question that we owe it to ourselves to ask because it's been established to be canon within this franchise. Do we know what these little pins are on Baby's design here in the game? No idea. In fact, most people probably didn't even remember that they existed in the first place. But in the books, they play an important role. These are the things that allow Baby to transform into a human disguise. Now, is that necessarily what they're doing in the game? No, definitely not. Is the best and likely only clue for what they really are coming from a separate continuity? Yeah, in this case, yes it is. This isn't us trying to shove puzzle pieces together like Scott warned us against. It's about seeing that in one puzzle, there's a piece that fits in a certain location, and in a separate puzzle, you have a similar piece that might end up acting in a similar way. And here's the thing, you don't have to take my word on any of this anymore. Scott recently made a new post about all of this to clarify the situation. In response to the question of whether
Memes
the lore of
roasting me
FNAF
about
is
the plot line
solvable,
lately.
he said this: "All I can do is say that some questions will be answered, even if it may not always be the answer you wanted. Be patient. Let me at least say this. Future games will look forward, but look to the novels to fill in some of the blanks to the past."
They kind of do that. Scott was kind of right. Help Wanted and Security, well, yeah, Security Breach and etc. kind of do that. Wanted to. Yeah, honestly, I'd say so.
So there you have it, from the creator himself. Does including the books in our discussions make things messy and complicated?
Weird Pat.
Sure, but remember
Yeah.
what franchise we're talking about
The
here.
pressed
friends. Messy and
Pat.
complicated is like the
Wait.
complicated? Sure.
Why are you still using fan-made Twisted One's cover in 2020? Why?
Sure, but remember what franchise we're talking about here, friends. Messy and complicated
You-
is like the formal
the
first
official
name
cover
that
can
Five
be
Nights at
found
Freddy's never
online.
uses. Call it McFNAF. Messy, complicated Five Nights at Freddy's. The long and short of it is that when it comes to this franchise, we as theorists have always had to be discerning over what clues are helpful and which ones are just red herrings. This is no different now. Back when we only had the games, we did it with the number of Foxy Toes and Freddy buttons. Did a missing
Toes.
button mean it was a new animatronic? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Now, we just have to do it with time-traveling ball pits and sound illusion discs. And here's the last thing I'm going to say on the issue, and hopefully it's the last time that I have to talk about it. At this point, where there's soon to be more books than there are games in this franchise, take a minute to wrap your head
Christ.
around that one. To dismiss the books entirely at this point is just short-sighted. And I'm not just saying
I count Pizza Sim and UCN as their own games. I don't care what anyone says.
that because we're referenced in the new book Fetch. Yeah, seriously, we're in it.
And
From
that doesn't
page-
include Finding
well,
Space 2
I
at
read
C.
it on digital, so it's like page 250 out of 3,127. Quote, "Greg did tune back in, though, when Kimberly Bergstrom raised her hand. Well, he sort of tuned back in. He heard her question, is this just a theory?" She probably
Oh.
didn't actually say it that way. That was just my creative interpretation of that line. "Look, Ma, I'm an inside joke hidden inside the second installment of a multi-volume scholastic book series. I've made it." Anyway, meta discussion over. Let's talk about this new book and what it means for the franchise, shall we?
And then you starred in a movie that made millions in the box office. Good job.
Fazbear Frights #2 Fetch was recently released, and it is, well, if I'm being honest, it feels much less connected to the series than the first one. Don't get me wrong, the stories are still really good, if not even darker than the original three.
Yeah,
I mean,
dude, Fetch, like the whole book, I adore it. Like all three
don't get me wrong, the stories are still
Hold on.
really good, if not even darker than the...
Yeah, like Fetch, Lonely Freddy, and Out of Stock are all like top tier Fazbear Fright stories for me. They're all like really fucking good. I know some people clown on Lonely Freddy sometimes, but like I think that one is like really good too. It is one of my favorites. Yeah, Fetch is probably my favorite like book from Fazbear Frights, and probably my favorite like FNAF book in general. It's a really good read, all three stories, including the epilogue. The epilogue is like pretty good too, from my memory. To be fair, I need to reread all the books and read like Tales of the Pizza Plex, because I haven't read a single book from that yet, even though I own them. But like, from my memory, I remember Into the Pit. The book was like pretty good. Like Into the Pit itself, like the story was that one was really good. To Be Beautiful, I really liked. Count the Ways was a little for me, but once I reread it, I might end up liking it. But like Fetch was like the whole book. Chef's kiss.
The original 3. I mean, one has a young girl outright being
I
mauled
think the
to
other ones.
death and wrapped in a
Yeah.
sheet while she lays there dying. So
It was until like Bunny Call they started doing weird shit because of In the Flesh.
pretty intense stuff,
Which
but
was,
the
like, the fifth
connections to
book.
the main lore are definitely a bit shakier this time around. I mean, the first book, Into the Pit, featured cameo performances by Golden Bonnie, Baby, Funtime Freddy, the Missing Children's Choir, and more. This one, meanwhile,
The
introduces
Missing
us to a
Children's
lot of new
Choir.
things. A smartphone-powered
Do-re-mi-fa-so-la-ti-do,
animatronic dog named Fetch, tiny
do-re-mi-fa-so-la-ti-do.
free-roaming versions of Freddy Fazbear called Lonely Freddies. We do get some
Yeah.
quality time
Wait,
with free-roaming
What is with
versions of
all
Freddy
these?
Fazbear
What's
called
these fan renders, dude? What's with these fan renders? They look like FNAF. They look like adventure animatronics, if anything. Like Adventure Fetch and Adventure Lonely Freddy. Imagine.
Lonely Freddies. We do get some quality time with
Adventure
Plush
Plush
Trap,
Trap
but
Chaser.
you know, it's Plush Trap. It's like the D-stringer in the FNAF canon alongside the Bitty Babs and the Endoskeleton 2. Is that a hot take? Did I just offend the Plush Trap stands? I mean, the
No. I mean, you did, but I don't care. Plush Trap's overrated. I agree with you. Okay, I think Plush Trap has more to him than Bitty Bab and the Endoskeletons. But, like, Plush Trap is still, like, not, like, an amazing character. I think he's still a good character, but I just don't think he's, like, one of the greats. Because some people think he's, like, amazing. But I don't know. But he's not Bitty Bab or Endoskeleton level, though.
barely squeaked into
He's,
Ultimate
like,
Custom Night,
somewhat
as it is.
above
I'm
that.
just saying here, guys. Anyway, let's walk through these 3 new horror stories and what they mean for the franchise, shall we? Story number 1, Fetch. Greg and his 2 friends, Hattie, and Cyril live near Olympia, Washington. Greg feels compelled to explore an old abandoned Freddy's restaurant where he discovers Fetch, a fearsome animatronic dog.
Yeah, what's
sharp
with this
teeth
fucking
and an
render
even
or
sharper
model?
understanding of texting lingo. Quote,
It's not
"All
bad,
life
I
is brief
just-
and empty," Greg
It just
asks.
looks like an
Fetch
adventure
looks like he's older
animatronic,
than
and I
my
don't think it
dad, but
fits.
Smartphones haven't been around that long.
And there's probably
After
more
getting
fitting
stared at
renders.
At pizzeria, the dog goes on to fetch whatever Greg wants, with increasingly disastrous results, killing a dog, ripping his uncle's finger off, and eventually retrieving his school crush in the worst way possible.
Jesus Christ,
It's
I
actually
remember
a pretty
this
simple
shit.
story, but there are 2 big things to
Oh,
call out
that's
about it. First, it
bloodbath.
continues a theme that we're starting to see develop in these books. Kids are being drawn to these restaurants. It's never explained in
Yeah.
the story, but Greg feels compelled to go to Freddy's by some unseen force. Quote from the book, "This might be what he'd felt in the field, what had called him here." And again, a bit
Well,
later
yeah,
in
at
the
least he
chapter,
did
Greg
credit
was
the
afraid he
modelers.
might
I'm
have
not
died
saying
what
he
was
didn't
there
credit
for.
them.
Had
Like,
he
I
done
saw
what
that he
was
credited
meant
them.
to
That's
do.
good.
And
I'm just
Greg
saying, I
is
think
now
there was
the
probably
second
better
character
renders he
to
could
have
have
some sort of
picked for the
psychic
video.
connection to these restaurants. As I
Like a
talked
friend
about in our
right
last
there.
theory, Oswald from Into the Pit had the exact same thing, where he inexplicably found himself drawing horrific animatronic monsters without ever knowing about Freddy's to begin with.
I hate
It's
those.
also
I hate
worth
that
noting that
animation.
both are the
Those
first
animations.
stories in their respective
Not that they're bad,
books.
but they're
It'll be
just
interesting to
creepy.
see whether this trend holds in future
Ugh.
installments. The second important part of the story, though, is that it clearly establishes Freddy's as a place where technology is advanced far beyond where the rest of society is. As I read in that earlier quote, Fetch can connect to smart devices like cell phones despite being older than the kid's parents. The reason I call this out is that in theory crafting for this franchise, I've seen a lot of theorists use the more modern, sleeker designs of the Funtime animatronics to put them later in timelines. But it seems like this story is telling us that those sorts of details don't matter. Freddy's is and will always be fantastically ahead of the curve when it comes to technology, especially technology for kidnapping small children. There was a bit more in that story about random event generators and plants/machines being able to read our minds and summoning stuff to you via mental focus, but I can't quite think of how it's important to any of the
That was
actual
a voice crack, I
overarching
think.
narratives for the franchise, so maybe
crack,
it's
Matt.
a discussion for a
Like 10
mini theory
minutes
at some
halfway
point
there.
down the line, but for now, I'm just gonna skip it. Story number 2 we'll come back to in a minute, as that one has the most to discuss. Story number
Lonely
3
Freddy.
out of stock. A new plush trap toy, the Plush Trap Chaser, a light-activated chomping green rabbit, is all the rage, selling out at stores across the nation. It also retails.
This is,
for
like, probably, like, my
$79.99.
favorite story
So Scott be
from
making those
Faceless
fat
Freddy.
stacks both IRL
I
and
love
in the
out of
book
stock.
world for his killer merch. A boy named Oscar, fed up with never getting what he wants, shoplifts the last one that someone had supposedly returned for being defective. Quote,
Yeah.
is it just me or do the teeth look wrong? Isaac pointed at the straight.
See, that's a more
slightly
fitting
yellow,
model slash
human-looking
render.
teeth that were visible
Plush
through
Trap Chaser.
Plush
I
Trap's
like that
partly
one.
opened mouth. And
It's
what's
probably just
with
an
the
edit,
eyes?
but
He reached out and
still.
poked one of the cloudy green eyes. Ew. He whipped his hand back and flicked his finger. It squishy, end quote. After a few days of it doing nothing, the plush trap suddenly activates and terrorizes Oscar and his friends, chomping through the house's doors and garages just trying to bite them. Their only protection is that plush trap freezes in the light. Quote again, he was turning the box over and over in his hands, and there in bold letters was a critical detail. Walks in the dark, freezes in the light, end quote. A few hours and a comedic number of faulty flashlights later, the boys destroy the monster at last by luring it in front of an oncoming train. A few things to call out here in this story. First and most obviously, it explains Plushtrap's behavior in FNAF 4. He really is just a haunted toy that goes on a rampage and is stopped by the power of flashlights. So it's cool to make that lore connection with Plushtrap's original minigame. We also know, based on the story, that Plushtrap apparently has the ability to mimic voices. He has a speaker system built in under his fur and is able to mimic the voices of Oscar's mother and friends. Now, this is a really interesting detail because up until this point, the only voice mimics in the franchise have been the Funtime animatronics, with their built-in systems intended to lure children away from their parents so that they could be grabbed. This suggests the possibility that Plushtrap was either a prototype for those larger models, testing out the voice mimicry software, or was himself a Funtime era animatronic. Whereas up until this point, all us theorists have classified him alongside the other nightmares from FNAF 4. But the last and most important thing to call out, though, is the fusion of human parts and animatronic parts. The story makes it very clear that the Plushtrap Oscar runs away with has both human eyes and teeth. Quote from the book, Raj turned to Oscar. You managed to steal us the only Plushtrap chaser that looks like a half-human hybrid, end quote. Now, this idea of a half-robot, half-human animatronic is a completely new concept for the series. But is it? You see, in FNAF 4, we had ourselves Nightmare, the black, transparent, spooky bear that, if you looked closely enough, had a human brain in its head as a part of its design, a detail that pretty much all of us dismissed. I mean, all of us glossed over Nightmare in general is just like the embodiment of death, the game's Grim Reaper as the crying child slowly flatlines in his hospital bed, or, you know, just a figment of the boy's haunted imagination. But with this context from Fazbear Fright, could Nightmare have actually been a real experiment? Was William Afton in his quest for immortality, or Henry in his quest for more lifelike robots, testing the human brain's ability to survive in and operate an animatronic body? This would make Nightmare the literal Frankenstein's monster for family entertainment dining. And even though I say that jokingly, it's also something that appears in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC for FNAF Help Wanted, where we actively program a brain and insert it into Dreadbear's head before handing it
that was a fun minigame.
Well done. It's time to introduce the creature.
Confusing
to the
at
kids
first, but
for
like
focus
just a
testing
fun
and
minigame.
troubleshooting.
We know, based on the original trilogy of books, that Afton was obsessed with recreating living metal just like those original haunted animatronics. I see Nightmare, Dreadbear, and this Plushtrap all as potential experiments looking to do exactly that. Lastly, we come to story number 2, Lonely Freddy. It's my personal favorite of the bunch. In this one, we have rebellious...
Like, at the time, Lonely Freddy was like my favorite of the 3 too. Now it's out of stock, but Lonely Freddy's probably my second favorite of the 3. I love Fetch too, don't worry. And, yeah, people were like, why is Lonely Freddy your favorite? It's a bad story. And I'm like, it's my opinion, jackass. I said it's ready, but Out of Stock is one of my favorite stories from Fetch Freddy that Bunny Call. Yeah, both Bunny Call and Out of Stock are really good. Out of Stock's probably my favorite, though. FNAF 2 is going to be a Christmas movie. What? Wait, what? Nightmare, hell yeah. Joey, what? Was this confirmed just now? Wait, what? No, you're making shit up. Nah, seriously? It'll release in December 5th. Well, that doesn't mean it's going to be a Christmas movie. A Christmas movie is when the movie itself is about Christmas or has Christmas themes. Just because it's releasing in December doesn't make it a Christmas movie, guys. You worried me for a second, Joey.
This teen Alec looking to expose his goody two-shoes sister Hazel
I
for
remember
the
this.
fraud that
Alec
she
was a
really
dick,
is. Alec in this
but
story
got what he
is
deserved.
actually a really tragic character. He's a teen who acts out because he's ignored by his parents, and the main reason he's trying to bring down his sister is because she is always the one who gets the attention. The two of them inexplicably
Good.
team up
You
to
deserve
torment
not
their
to be
parents
loved.
and lead up to Hazel's birthday
Fuck you.
party at Freddy Fazbear's, with Alec planning on double crossing
Wait.
her parents in the lead up to Hazel's birthday party at
What type of fucking map is not map? What type of logo is that? It's such a weird choice of characters too. Rockstar Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Funtime Chica, Funtime Fox. Jesus Christ. Hello Cyber Demon, welcome to the stream.
Freddy Fazbear's. With
What a
Alec
selection.
planning on double crossing her the day of the party. When the day arrives,
What a
Alec's plan
selection.
backfires. It's revealed that Hazel is truly just that pure and good of a person. It's been Alec who's been the jerk, pushing everyone around him away, thinking himself as the victim when he was actually making himself into the victim. With the parents just trying to cater to his needs and Hazel just wanting a brother who liked her. Alec
And it is the only reason people hate Lonely Freddy so much is because Alec is a dick. Like the main protagonist is a dick, and I'm like, that's the point. That's the fucking point. And like, he gets comeuppance at the end, so it's like, it's deserved. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, man. If you don't like dickish characters in your story, then beats me.
runs off, ashamed of his actions,
Or
and
my
hides
boy
in the
with
storage
Funtime
closet.
Foxy and
Just
she
as
goes
he starts
Rockstar
to make a
Freddy's the main
promise to
event.
change for the better, he meets with a short little lonely Freddy, a free-roaming 2-foot doll made to entertain kids that are ignored or forgotten about at parties. But things are never quite what they seem in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The cute little bear hypnotizes Alec and then body swaps with him, imprisoning Alec's consciousness inside the tiny bear body. Quote from that moment, there, sitting across the table from his sister and his parents, was Alec. It was the same rumpled t-shirt he'd thrown on that morning before the party, the same ripped jeans, the same
That
unruly
ending
golden
would
curls,
always creep
like
me out.
green eyes. Hey, Alec
That's why I
said,
love
the
this
voice
story
in his
so
head
much.
quiet at first, but quickly it was screaming, hey, that's not me! That's not me! His eyes, his stolen green eyes in his stolen body, gleamed at Alec. And then, fake Alec smiled. As Alec, trapped in the lonely Freddy, was carried away by a store employee, he saw fake Alec wink at him from the table before returning his attention to a smiling, happy family. Dark, right? And
Yeah,
Alec
it is
isn't
fucked
alone.
up.
After he's puked down by
Deserves
one of
it,
the kids at the
though.
party, he's picked up and thrown into the dumpster, where he meets a couple new friends. One final quote. His fall was broken by dozens of plush bears that looked exactly like him. Dozens of discarded lonely Freddys. Help! Alec thought he heard himself say. Pretty soon it was every bear in the bin, their thin, muted screams for help swallowed by the metal and darkness that entombed them. Alec and his new friends, dozens of the lonely ones. Ah, what a great closing line for that story. It is so heartbreaking to see this misguided kid suddenly learn to love his family, only to have his chance at redemption ripped away by these animatronics. It is so sad as a story. But
I
here's the
know.
thing, for as
That's why I
sad as
love
is,
it.
This story carries over yet another recurring theme that we're seeing develop in these books, that animatronics are stealing the identities of kids. In the first book, we had the story To Be Beautiful, where Baby steals the looks and identity of a girl named Eleanor. Here, we have ourselves another robot AI, this one housed inside the Lonely Freddy module, stealing the body of Alec. This, to me, is right in alignment with what we've been expecting from Vanny in the new FNAF game that's slated for release later this year. Remember, in FNAF VR, we hear the story of Jeremy, and how he cuts off his own face in an attempt to reject the system taking control of his brain. And when we beat that game, it ends with Glitchtrap basically locking us away and taking over our body. We let him escape through us. But what we thought was happening on a small scale, one person getting taken over in one game, instead appears to be happening to kids in pizzerias everywhere. It's further evidence supporting this theory that I did on FNAF VR, where the story from this point forward is basically Afton creating an army, a cult, a bunch of brainwashed, or more accurately, body-swapped people hiding in public, hiding in plain sight, taking over bodies one by one. Kinda makes you wonder what FNAF 2020's got up its sleeve, right? But before we look forward, we actually have to look backward. You see, there's one last topic I'd like to explore with this final story, but it's a doozy. It's the parallels that this story has with FNAF 4. In fact, I believe that the Lonely Freddy story is helping us to solve what is one of the longest-standing mysteries in this franchise, and also one of the strangest inclusions that we've never really had a solid answer
I see where
for
this
to
is
begin with.
going.
And that, my friends, is the true story of psychic friend
Fredbear.
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear. But in order to tell you why, I'm gonna need a bit more time. So until then, my friends, there's only one last thing to say. Do you want to save money on pizza?
And yeah, all right. So that was that one. Pretty good video, actually. I liked this one. This was like pretty good. I actually like enjoyed that. I liked the analysis he did on like Lonely Freddy the most. I liked like out of stock, like I liked his like his whole analysis on everything here. It was actually pretty good. Yeah. So yeah.
Wendy's.
Next one. Oh, Wendy's. Wendy's. All right. Yeah. So this one was released. This next one, April 18th, 2020. All right. So FNAF 4: The Body Snatchers, which is going to probably talk about the truth behind psychic friend Fredbear. Oh, and it's the background. It's the background that we all know and love. Alright. I've used this before in the FNAF 400% completion revisit stream. Which those streams will come back this summer, by the way.
He's your buddy. When your brother is a jerk, he's your pal. When your dad is off at work, he won't leave you. When you go get a bite. At least until the 6th night. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere.
The theme song, I know, right? This is a classic.
Psychic friend Fredbear. He's a flower for reasons still unknown, and he stalks you on your way back home. He makes a promise that throws off all the lore. Seriously, Scott, what is this line for? And is it supposed to be in a slightly different yellow font
Beard
here?
mat.
Are you meaning this to be figurative or literal? Because if it's literal, you are opening up a literal can of worms. He's here,
He's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear.
He's here,
He's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear. Oh. Also, the
Hello,
video is 20
Internet.
minutes.
Welcome to Game
Slay.
Theory, where I start off today with a disclaimer. Warning. In entering this video, and honestly all of my theories, you are entering a zone of speculation.
Yeah!
The idea is valid for consideration in the hopes that it solves more problems than it creates, answers more questions than it raises, or ties together dangling pieces of evidence in a narratively satisfying way. Am I trying to solve the lore? Yes. Am I doing it by asking really extreme over-the-top questions, looking into very specific details way too closely, and more often than not drawing connections between concepts that probably aren't connected at all? Absolutely yes. Side effects of entering the theory zone may include a blown mind, total and utter confusion, a deeper appreciation of your favorite franchises, fun stories to share with friends, a head full of random factoids that will at no point aid you in life, and disillusionment about human existence and our own place in the universe. Enter at your own risk. Disclaimers aside, theory crafting is a tricky needle to thread. A good theory is one that has enough evidence to support it, but not so much evidence that it's basically a known fact. It requires extrapolation, thinking beyond just the stuff that we're given, but not so far past that you're overreaching or making baseless claims. And all of that while still maintaining a satisfying story. A story that stays true to the franchise that you're talking about while not being afraid to take that known story story in new, often riskier directions. In a lot of ways, theory crafting is like writing fan fiction, just, you know, with more evidence and less aggressive cuddling. A lot less aggressive
Oh, God.
cuddling than
Ah,
fan fictions
what the
I've been
fuck?
exposed to over the years. Anyway, the reason that I say all of this right now is that today's theory is, how do I put it? It's one of the stretchier ones. Like, there are some theories that are rock solid. There's some really strong evidence in the game, and it's supported by stuff that's been said by the developers or creators. Then there are others that require a bit more creative license, where the connections are there, but they might require you to squint a little bit, or just, you know, have fun with it and go along for the ride. And this episode is one of those theories, because today we're once again diving into the world of Fetch, Book 2 of the Fazbear Fright series. You see, last time I mentioned this, Fetch was recently released, and it is, well, if I'm being honest, it feels much less connected to the series than the first one. The connections to the main lore are definitely a bit shakier. This one, meanwhile, introduces us to a lot of new things. A smartphone-powered animatronic dog named Fetch, tiny free-roaming versions of Freddy Fazbear called Lonely Freddies. And that felt weird to me. Every story of the first book felt very connected to established characters, from Golden Bunny suits to shape-shifting baby to Funtime Freddy. So why was this one, the second book, doing so many new things? It felt like a pretty extreme tonal shift, especially considering Scott had just posted about how these books would fill in some of the blanks from the past. So then I thought about it, and I considered what blanks from the past this odd collection of stories might be trying to fill, and something clicked. I think that there's a chance that one of the new inclusions in this book is actually something that we've known about for a long time. An oddball character that's confused us and stymied our theories for years. I believe that there's a chance that Fetch's Lonely Freddies may actually be the real identity of FNAF 4's psychic friend Fredbear. You remember that plush doll from FNAF 4 with the living eyes that tracked your movements as you walked around the room, that stalked you in the streets and disguised itself as a flower? The thing that could actually read the crying child's innermost thoughts. I think that guy was a type of Lonely Freddy doll. But to truly understand why I think these two are connected, let's begin with Lonely Freddy's story. To quickly recap the story in a bit more detail than I did last time, because now the details actually matter for the theory, Alec is an angry teenager who's upset that his younger sister Hazel gets all of their parents' love and affection because she's practically perfect in every way. So when Hazel, just out of the blue, starts being overly nice to Alec and wants to join him in making their parents miserable, he doesn't trust her. He suspects that she's up to something, and so he concocts a plan to expose her for being a spoiled brat at her upcoming birthday party, which happens at, wouldn't you know it, the local Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. His plan, well, it's not a particularly good one, and if I have to fault this story for one thing, it's that the mechanics of how it all works is kind of confusing. So stay with me here. At Freddy's, they have this big money booth. You know, those clear boxes with all these tickets around you, and you try to grab them and walk away with the cash in the booth. And in the booth, there's a special ticket that allows you to win the top prize in the restaurant. A Yarg Foxy. Basically a large Foxy doll with extra hook-swinging action. Okay, so it seems like Hazel really wants to win the Yarg Foxy, so Alex sabotages her chances by taking out the special winning ticket before she gets in. Except she does win. By some weird, magical, unexplained miracle, the ticket winds up in her hair and she wins the Foxy doll. The twist, though, is that she didn't want to win it for herself. She wanted to win it for Alec. You see, Alex secretly loves Freddy's Pizzeria, but he never gets to have his birthday there. And of all the characters, he loves Foxy the most, even pretending to be Yarg Foxy around the house when no one's looking. But when Hazel tries to give it to him as a sign of friendship, as a way to try and finally make him happy, all it does is infuriate him. Once more bested by his perfect sister, Alec loses it, he rips the Foxy doll and runs off to the storage room crying. Once there, he meets a Lonely Freddy doll, a small, free-roaming version of everyone's favorite bear. The bear hypnotizes him and then body swaps with him, leaving Alec's consciousness trapped forever in the doll's body, while an AI with his face roams free, unbeknownst to his family. So forgive me the detailed plot description, but I needed to get all that in because Alec's story, strangely enough, closely matches what we see happening in FNAF 4's Crying Child. Now, I don't think Alec is the Crying Child by any means. There are just way too many differences here, but I did want to call out how similar these two stories are because
you do that later on with Gregory, though.
The parallels seem intentional. They seem to be inviting us to compare these two stories. friends. So let's do exactly that. Just like in FNAF 4, there's a countdown to a birthday party happening at Freddy's at the end of the week. Though in this case, it's a sister's party and not his. Speaking of the sister, Alec's younger sister Hazel is described as being cute and perfect, with a lot of emphasis being placed on her green eyes and her curly yellow hair. An important physical description considering Elizabeth, the girl who would go on to possess Baby and who we assume is Crying Child's sister and owner of this room in FNAF 4, is also blonde with green eyes. In fact, eye color is brought up a lot, an unusual amount throughout the Lonely Freddy story. Quotes like this: Alec had never noticed the bear's eyes before. Had they always been that blue? And again, its eyes were as blue and deep as an ocean trench. Over 13 times are eyes in this story qualified by their color, which is worth noting considering that a lot of the other short stories thus far in Fazbear Frights have had themselves pretty sparse character descriptions. But this one, for some reason, really chooses to emphasize the fact that Alec and Hazel have green eyes and that Lonely Freddy has blue eyes, which, if you have an obsessive level of knowledge of the series, should ring a few alarm bells. In Sister Location, eye color was a huge deal, so much so that I did a whole theory about it back when Sister Location came out, where the baby animatronic had blue eyes until she scooped Elizabeth and her eyes turned green. And here we have something very similar happening. Quote from the story: Alex stared hard into the blue eyes of Lonely Freddy, eyes that had burned through his soul, and he searched for answers of his own, but he only came away with more questions, because the blue eyes of the bear had suddenly turned a light green. End quote. And again, in this quote, all Alec could see was the bear as its newly green eyes bore through him. So we've got a party, a sister, and some eyes. But obviously there's gotta be more, right? Alec, when his plan fails, runs off to hide in the storage room crying, similar to the crying child being locked in the storage room in FNAF 4. And in general, Alec is just a sulky, moody kid who, similar to our crying child, both loves and hates Freddy Fazbear's. Alec, in the book, secretly loves the restaurant and its characters, but he also hates it because he only gets to go when it's for his sister, which makes him bitter and angry to be there. It's a lot like the conflicted feelings our crying child has for the restaurants, who clearly likes the franchise. I mean, he has all the toys in his room, and yet while he's there, he's clearly miserable. We're not exactly sure why, but he does have mixed feelings about this franchise. Kind of like me. That is hashtag relatable. I feel seen, crying child.
My relation with this franchise is complicated too. Don't worry.
And the game is the Yarg Foxy toy. When Hazel tries to give the toy to Alec, Alec freaks out and rips the toy's arm off. It's a small detail, but one that immediately made me think of the Foxy that's in the crying child's FNAF 4 room. A Foxy plush with one very specific feature. A feature that has never gotten explained. Its head was pulled off. So we have ourselves two Foxy plushies, both with a body part ripped off in some way, in the possession of a kid who both loves and hates Freddy's, that winds up locked in a storage room crying, attends a birthday party, and has themselves a green-eyed sister with blonde hair. It is just an oddly specific series of parallels that are almost so precise, they're inviting us to compare them. It's actually a bit uncanny. Alec in this story is almost like a fusion of the crying child and his brother. You see, crying child for all the reasons that we just talked about, but also the older brother because, well, he's a mean older brother to his sister, and his favorite character is Foxy, so much so that he pretends to be Foxy around the house, just like we see the older brother doing to torment the crying child in FNAF 4. Again, it's not exactly the same. There are plenty of differences between these two scenarios, but there are a lot of parallel details, almost like alternate universe versions of roughly the same series of events. So what does any of this have to do with psychic friend Fredbear? Well,
he's here, he's there, he's ever. You gotta call psychic friend Fredbear.
Are intentional. They're drawing lines between the two stories, inviting us to compare them. And when you do that, it becomes undeniable that psychic friend Fredbear is a lonely Freddy. To understand why, let's start with the book. This is how Lonely Freddy is first described. Quote, it was a weird name for a toy, but the weirdest parts of it were harder to define. The bear stood stiff, almost at attention. Its eyes stared straight ahead at the stage, but Alec had the strangest feeling that it was still watching him. End quote. So, a small Freddy toy with eyes that watch you as you move around the room. Definitely sounds like what Psychic Friend does as we maneuver our way through the FNAF 4 minigames. His white eyes just move around with us. wherever we go. We're also told that the Lonely Freddy is able to free roam in order to follow the kids around. Again, explaining why he shows up in practically every screen of the FNAF 4 minigames. It is literally designed to be a moving surveillance camera. I mean, maybe it can't disguise itself as a flower or whatever. Chalk that one up to Scott's artistic license.
Pennywise.
Later in the story, we're told what the purpose of the Lonely Freddy is. Quote again, "At Freddy Fazbear's, we believe that no child should have to experience the wonder and delight of Freddy Fazbear's Family Pizzeria alone. Using patented technology and a touch of that Freddy Fazbear magic, Freddy will learn all about your child's favorite things just like a true friend." Aunt Gigi leaned close to their mom. "Is it just me, or does Lonely Freddy sound like the cure for the unwanted kid?
Gigi,
it's a
easy
mechanical
kid.
last resort.
Hello,
As in,
M1
no one
Iraq.
wants to
Welcome
play
to the
with this
stream.
kid, so here's a machine that'll do it instead." End quote. This is a device specifically designed to become a friend to sad and lonely children. Children just like FNAF 4's crying child. Children just like Alec. And in a line, again drawing parallels between the two stories, we get ourselves this. Quote, "If there was ever a kid who would have been foisted onto a Lonely Freddy at a birthday party, it would have been
by his own
Alec." Now,
petard.
this is important. One of the strangest things about psychic friend Fredbear in the game was his knowledge of crying child's innermost thoughts, saying things like, "Remember what you saw," and "he hates you." It's the whole reason I started calling him Psychic Friend Fredbear in the first place. The toy's knowledge of what was going on inside the boy's head was just uncanny. Just one of the many strange things about this character. One of the many strange things about this character that gets an explanation via Lonely Freddy's behavior in the story. The bear approaches Alec in the storage room and starts asking questions. Questions that start to turn serious. Quote from the book, "I've been waiting for you, friend," the bear said. "We should be best friends." "It's a stuffed animal," Alec told himself. "It's a stuffed toy." "What's your favorite color?" "My favorite color is green." "What's your favorite food?" "Lasagna." Then the bear's questions took a different turn. "What would you do if you were asked to hurt someone you love?" It felt like the bear was reaching its soft plush paw into his very soul and extracting the answers he kept the most hidden. And it was doing it so effortlessly. So the Lonely Freddy is a stuffed bear designed to act as a surveillance camera on kids. Follow him around,
Bert thinks
talk
he's
to the
Garfield.
sad, lonely ones, and then extract information from them to become their friend before eventually body swapping with them. I mean, each and every one of those details, minus the whole body swap thing, is something that we see the psychic friend Fredbear do. But there is one last detail that I haven't included yet. The Freddys are controlled by a man who works in a private backroom office. Quote again, the party prepper turned a dial on her hip-clipped walkie-talkie and pressed her finger to her headset. "Someone get Daryl to do a Lonely Freddy demo."
Daryl's on break.
The fact that there's someone behind the scenes controlling these devices in the book is a direct callback to the secret private room from Sister Location. The one where there were surveillance cameras watching the FNAF 4 house, guarded by the password 1983. It was in that room that we saw a psychic friend Fredbear for the first and only time in a non-8-bit setting. There, on the desk, was a short little plushie with his white little surveillance eyes and a walkie-talkie right next to him, coinciding with this scene from the book. So, there you have it, friends. The official name of psychic friend Fredbear is Lonely Freddy. It's not quite as fun, but I guess it's easier for me to type, so that's a plus. It's a camera system controlled by someone.
You still call him
in a
psychic friend
back
Fredbear. I know you do.
A system that has the ability to walk and talk and maybe even hypnotize.
What a
body
recolor.
swap. Now the question that we're left with is who was controlling it in FNAF 4? I mean, it seems like the obvious answer here should be William Afton, right? Who else would be doing it? But the bigger question is why? Why would he be doing all this just to watch what we assume is his own son? And then over in Bookland, the question is whether all of this is intentional. It seems like the employees don't actually know the true nature of these robots, so is this an AI roaming around, or was a normal Lonely Freddy swapped out for one with body snatching abilities? That one seems like the most likely scenario, considering in story number 3, out of stock, the plush trap chaser is swapped with an evil one with human body parts. So maybe William Afton, or some of his people in this book universe, are slowly seeding out evil animatronics into the world to run as little test cases. Also, since I'm wrapping up my discussion of Fetch here, something else for you to chew on. At Hazel's birthday party, there's a girl named Charlotte. A girl who shares a name with the child that we know goes on to possess the puppet. A girl who, in this story, is allergic to chocolate and accidentally eats some and then spends the rest of the party vomiting. Could this actually give us an explanation for why Charlotte in the games would end up outside of the party, outside of the restaurant, when we see her in FNAF 6, before she eventually gets killed and turned into a puppet? It may be. It's just a thought that I'm throwing out
Damn, didn't know the puppet hated chocolate.
But with Fetch out of the way, it's time to look ahead. because based on the descriptions, it's books number 4 and 5 coming out later this year that seem like they may hold the biggest lore reveals yet. In book 4,
oh yeah, you get quite a lore reveal for Bunny Call with In the Flesh. Yeah, there's some nice lore reveals for that one.
Description, we see that one of the main characters will have the name Susie.
Oh no.
She also has herself a dog. Susie is almost guaranteed to be confirmed as our fruity maze girl, and our first ever victim, the one who goes on to possess Chica. We also know that one of the book 4 stories will be about Pete and his younger brother who, quote, get in a fight in the wake of their parents' divorce and fall prey to a gruesome curse. Two brothers with divorced parents that have some blood curse on their family. Seems like it could be another stand-in for our crying child and Foxy bro getting wrapped up in the cycle of serial killing their
wrapped
father
up in some
started
controversy,
decades
bro.
prior. And then flipping over to book number 5's description, quote, in room 1280 of Heracles' Hospital.
Matt redirects residential anger over his many failed relationships into a video game and ends up birthing.
Something evil is keeping the man alive. A man with gruesome burns all over his body and an iron will to live. Sounds a lot like our good old buddy William. Or it could be the aftermath of the FNAF 6's restaurant burning. With that being the last book in the Fazbear Fright series,
Nope.
I'd expect that one to tie up a lot of different loose ends.
Nah,
Speaking of
there's
loose ends, by
gonna
the
be
way,
more.
hate 'em. That is why this show exists. To get rid of narrative loose ends, to tie them up, put them neatly and organized back on the shelf. So you know what I
fence
really
'em.
appreciate? What doesn't have loose ends? Wireless earbuds. No wires means no obnoxious tangling.
Oh, that was
which in
smooth.
turn
Wait, what's this? I
years
see
of
Nightmare.
Not having to constantly readjust.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. That was that. All right. So I do have to get going. Unfortunately, it is the end of the stream. I know we only saw three. I know we only saw 3 videos today. Fuck. I'm setting it up for next time. I know we only saw
I went to West.
3 videos and not 4, but I do have to go, unfortunately. But I enjoyed our time today. I liked his analysis on Lonely Freddy a lot. That video we just saw was also pretty good. Maybe deciphering favorite stuff. Anyway, tomorrow will be a new video. It'll be Popular Playtime related, so yeah. Sunday, plan on doing a stream. Don't know of what yet. People want fucking Garnet Band 7. Jesus Christ. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. And then, yeah. Yeah, I gotta get going. So, in the description below will be eventually the chapters for this stream, as well as that is Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Tyler Actors, Tyler's World. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you on the next thing that I do. Toodles.